Okay, hello today and welcome. My name is Manuel Lloyd, and today we're going to talk in our ITSM brief about 4 steps to creating a basic business continuity and disaster recovery plan. Many of you already have data backups and off-site storage, cloud computing. It's more than that we're going to talk about here today, or try to briefly discuss, because it's more than just backing up your data. This is a plan. This is an actual architectural matter that requires detailed planning. Number one, you have to have a strategy. You have to have players in place, teams in place, the whole 9 yards. But we're not going to get that deep into it today. I'm just going to talk a little bit about a soup starter to get you going. So let's go here to the next screen. So, loss of data is a common problem for medical practices in any business, really. Fortunately, it's a problem that can be avoided with the correct preparation, just like anything else. While devastating amounts of data can be lost during catastrophic acts of God, if you will, like hurricanes and floods and even terrorist attacks, fires. But the number one reason for disasters are hardware failure. And believe it or not, the number 2 reason are people. Making mistakes, disgruntled employees, the whole 9 yards. And the floods and the natural disasters are probably the lowest risk that you have, because typically, unless you're in a hurricane-ridden area like me here in Wilmington, North Carolina, or a tornado-ridden area, but even here in Wilmington, we seem to be able to not have that big of a problem with disasters, with floods and things of that nature. We've had some close calls. Floyd did us the worst from what I can remember living here. But anyway, so it doesn't take a big event to cause a disaster. It could be as something as simple as dropping a laptop on the floor that had critical data on it, which it shouldn't have never had anyway. All that data should be replicated somewhere off-site, whether you want to put it in the cloud or another location, whatever the case may be. A surge, whatever the case may be. Anything can cause a disaster. The most important thing is not to think, well, nothing's never happened to us before, knock on wood, so to speak. You want to prepare for the worst. You want to prepare for the worst and hope for the best, obviously, right? So having a plan in place, those that fail to plan to fail, or they plan to fail. So that's the saying. I'm getting tongue-tied here. And many of you don't know that I actually have been tongue-tied as a kid, so I apologize for some of my speech that I have to slow down and say things. So having a disaster recovery. And listen, if you're a medical practice, you need to read very, very, very carefully CFR 45, section 164.308A7, or Contingency Plan. There's 6 implementations there, and 2 are addressable and 4 are required. And I'll briefly tell you what they are. 164.308A7A I'm sorry, 164.308A7. I'm trying to go from memory here. A7 II capital A. And then it goes B, C, D, and E, and then there's 164.308 A8 rather, which is evaluation, which is a requirement. But A, B, C, D, and E are backup. A is a data backup plan. B is a disaster recovery plan. C is emergency mode operations plan. D is test and revision procedures. And E is application criticality analysis. So you want to look hardy into those things, because you can be fined for not even for, they had I can't remember. I don't know if it was Minnesota or somewhere like that, but one healthcare, a covered entity was fined $400,000+ for not having one single piece of paper, and that was a BAA. Not having a business associate agreement, it cost them $400,000+. Now, what happened cost them, but the mere fact they didn't have that BAA was the real issue. And don't be surprised if you see a disaster happening to these smaller to medium-sized medical practices, and they don't have a plan in place to cover contingency planning because they didn't have a plan in place. So, there are templates out there you can get. There's IT consultants that can help you with this kind of thing. Pay the money, get it done, and have it in place. And there's a whole talk I'll do about that. I've done a lot of them already. As a matter of fact, I had a speech in November of 2016, this past year, at Duke Energy in Huntersville, North Carolina, where I spoke to several large banks, Wells Fargo, BB&T, TIA, CREF, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and they obviously have business continuity and disaster recovery plans, right? But a lot of those folks are old school and have not adopted to the cloud yet. And how do you use the cloud to integrate the cloud with your business continuity and disaster recovery plan? And that's what my speech was about. And I tell you, before I even got well into the speech, I already had a ton of questions. So it's a very, very hot topic. But anyway, let's talk about these four things. Excuse me. Number one, take a potential inventory of things that are at risk, a potential risk inventory, right? So, if, like I was saying, you think that natural disasters are the number one problem, and they're not. Hardware failures, server switches, disk drives, they're about 44% of the disasters that happen. Software is next, then viruses, natural disasters, and human error actually is number two. Human error is number two. So we want to take the potential risk inventory and make a list of everything that could potentially cause data loss. And you want to have a solution for each one of those, right? So your list should include things like losses that won't affect your business very much and things that will shut you down. Or just may have you down for a couple of days or whatever the case may be. You want to be very, very mindful of those things, right? So experts out there in the IT industry can help you with creating this risk inventory. They're going to have the knowledge and experience to identify possibilities that you're not likely to think of yourself, but you need to plan for at the same time. So these IT experts are also going to be able to discuss preventive solutions to guard against each one of those potential data loss risks that you're going to run into. So you want to definitely take an inventory. Number two, rate each of your potential data loss situations. So how likely is it for each of these items on your risk inventory to occur, right? You want to rate them. And if you remember, I talked about application criticality analysis, which is A7 164. Oh God, I have to say the whole thing again. 164 308 A7 E. Okay, so I have to say the whole thing in order for me to remember, because there's so many HIPAA security codes out there. It's just ridiculous, and I know way too many of them by heart, which is kind of nuts. It shows you how long I've been doing this, So anyway. You want to sit down and tear out your data and your applications, right? So your application criticality analysis. So I would recommend you start with a 0 to 3, maybe 4 level. So tier 0 is the most critical. Tier 4 is the least critical. They're all critical, obviously, so you know that. And you might say, well, Manny, why would you only go that far? Well, in my speech that I had with the banks, there was one bank that said they had 8 tiers, and I can believe it. I mean, they're a multi-billion-dollar multinational bank. So, but for you small to medium-sized practices, 4 tiers is about enough. And for instance, like your EHR is going to be tier 0, obviously. PACS is going to be tier 0. Your Exchange or your mail server, if you have one, if you're not using Office 365 in the cloud, or if you have a hybrid Office 365 environment, that's going to be a tier 0, more than likely. Tier 1 may be your fax server if you have manual faxes. But if you get a ton of faxes, which a lot of healthcare providers do, and they use digital faxing, then that's a different story. So sit down with your IT department or your IT guy or gal or person, or get a consultant in there that's going to help you have this laid out for you. But this is the most important part of the planning. The most important part of the planning is what's called a BIA, or a business impact analysis, to kind of figure out, number one, that will be taking the potential risk inventory. That will be somewhere in that area, having a business risk, a business impact analysis. So, but number two is a pet peeve of mine, because, excuse me, you don't want to go through this exercise. It's a pain in the neck. You want to cast it off on somebody who's in IT, or who Susie in accounting, who knows computers, if you will. So she's the IT person, and you want to throw it off on her. This is a very detailed matter. This number two here. They all are, but number two, you have to, because when a disaster strikes, the first thing people are going to say is, when is X going to be back up again? When can I get to my files? When can I do this? It's going to be a pain in the neck. So take that pain now to plan ahead, so you don't run into that later. Number three, you want to be able to develop your disaster recovery plan itself. Again, it starts with a business impact analysis, a threat and risk assessment, contingency planning, dependency analysis, what depends on what, which application depends on that application, which department. The IT portion of it itself is horizontal, right? So if you draw a horizontal line and you drew vertical lines all the way throughout that horizontal lines, each vertical lines represents each different section of your medical practice or business, or each different department, whatever you call them, sections, departments, areas, business units. Each one has to align itself with the company overall objectives when it comes to the IT service management in itself. So align those things, the sections or business units, with align the vertical with the horizontal, basically, is what I'm trying to say. So you want to go through each of your potential risk here and the actual solution to, and determine how long it would take to recover from the loss for each one of those risks. So in business continuity, in the business continuity profession, there are response strategies, and those response strategies are cold, warm, and hot. Basically, you do nothing, you do a little bit, you do gradual, you do incremental, you do full. And if you were to draw a chart where how fast you want to recover your data over the type of strategy, the money starts coming in the closer you get to a hot strategy. So cold is cheap. That means, as far as the cost of recovering your data, the cost of a disaster recovery model, not the other costs associated with being down and losing revenue and losing patients and things of that nature. So cold starts at, hey, you know what? We can wait for 72 hours to get this thing back up and going. In other words, your maximum tolerable outage, your MTO, is 72 hours. I don't know of any healthcare practice that's like that. I don't know of anyone that's like that. Okay, they're ones that are about to go out of business, basically, if they can wait 72 hours to get things back going and see patients, unless it's a major holiday, and they're doing it over the holiday. But then they're paying, up the nose, because an IT company is going to charge you additional hours over that special holiday. So when you get to warm, it costs a little, and it costs hardly nothing. It costs something, but not as much compared to a warm strategy. But the ones that goes through the nose is the hot strategy, where we got to be back up in 15 minutes. And everybody wants that, right? We want to be back right up, right away, but you don't want to pay for it. So that's the thing you have to measure. So where you want to be is in disaster recovery nirvana, somewhere where you can find a solution or a situation where you can have a hot strategy for a low cost. Typically, that's hard to find. Now, well, there is one company out there that I will recommend you look into. That name of that company, I forget where they're located. I think they're in California, but they have an international presence. It's Infrascale, Infrascale. Infrascale is a small to mid-sized solution that medical practices can use. I've actually helped one medical practice IT department implement a solution this few months ago, I believe, or maybe it was last year. I can't remember. I do so many of them, but this product is really cool. As a matter of fact, it got the Gartner Group Cool Product, Cool Technology Award, which is nice. But they have this push button failover thing where you can actually just push a button and it fails over your VMs and all that good jazz. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, just reach out to me. We could talk a little bit more about it. But so in developing your disaster recovery plan, you actually need to have a written plan. That is 164.308A7 IIB, capital B. Disaster recovery plan. It actually says it in the HIPAA code, disaster recovery plan. So you want to actually have a written plan, and that plan needs to be as detailed as possible. It needs to have recovery teams, management teams, technology teams, maintenance teams, and then of course you want to have something to take care of your people in the case of a disaster. What if there's a cyber attack? What are you going to do? Excuse me. Anyway, number 3 has three let's say acronyms that I want you to remember. RTO, RPO, and MTO. RTO is recovery time objective. How far back in time do you want to go, or what's the amount of time you want to take to recover your data? At what time, at what point did the disaster take place? And the recovery point objective, at what point did it take place? And then the maximum tolerable outage is the MTO. How long do you think you can be down? And this is the one that gets into the meat of the money matter, is every hour that you are operating your medical practice, the chief operations officer or the operations manager, whatever your title you have, wants to know and has to be able to report to the CEO, it's costing us X amount of dollars per hour to be down in this disaster right now. And one of the things you want to have there, if you don't have it, is cyber insurance, because typically you're down in the healthcare industry. 88% of ransomware attacks happen to healthcare. So call your insurance provider and say, hey, look, do we have cyber insurance? And if so, what does it cover? And have that conversation. One company I know of that does a really good job in this is MedMal Direct. Michael Techley or Michelle Bilski. Those are the two people I've actually dealt with, and they're really professional, great folks right here in North Carolina. I think Burlington, and Michelle's in Florida, I believe. But you may want to reach out to MedMal Direct. They don't just do malpractice; they also have a good cyber insurance program. So, anyway, so those are the 3 letters of the 3 acronyms. You need to ask your IT department or your IT folks or your consultant about, hey, what's our RTO, what's our MTO, what's our RPO. They're going to ask you, well, what do you want it to be? Because the quicker you get to recovering your data, the more it's going to cost you. Just remember that part. And that's a pretty much naturally known. So number 4, you want to put your disaster recovery plan to the test. This is where you get a lot of pushback from the money people, because what happens in a situation that I've seen so many times as the virtual CIO, I'll go into a medical practice as a virtual CIO to try to help clean up their technical processes and put them on an IT service management model that is going to have a good strategy, design, that design will be transitioned into operations. And those operations should have a continual improvement model that keeps things going smoothly, so you don't have to have this break-fix mentality all the time. Things are actually automated and processed the whole 9 yards. Most IT folks have a lot of dirty processes because they're basically going out to firefight. Now, that's not to say anything bad about firefighters. I love firefighters. They put their lives on the line. But if you're always fighting fires in an IT department, you never have any management structure, your IT is going to be out of whack. It's going to be out of line, just like a car that's out of a line. It's not going to drive well. It's going to be a horrible experience. So you want to push back when you get the pushback from the business. So the business decision makers and the technical decision makers have this interpretation thing where they don't understand each other. So you need an interpreter to speak geek and to speak business. And that interpreter can be anyone. It could be someone who works with you already, an outside consultant, like myself, and they can say, hey, look, the business guy wants this to the technical guy. He can translate that into geek. Oh, okay, I understand what he wants now. Here's what we have to do. Then I take the here's what we have to do in technical geek speak and go, hey, Mr. Business, he wants to be able to do this right here so that we're not using a CapEx model versus an OpEx model so we can get this done. Oh, okay, I understand what you're saying now. So that's the pushback that you're going to get. But the testing is something that you're going to want to ensure that you put a lot of time into. Don't just look at it as like a simple test. Once you've created a plan of action for the recovering lost data, you should test it at least once a year. And what I mean by that is, let's say you have an environment with 2 physical servers and 20 virtual servers, 10 on each physical server, right? And the most critical ones are going to be your EHR, your accounting, your PACS, and all that stuff. Clinical systems are going to be first, right? And accounting systems will probably be next. HR, payroll, those kind of things. So out of those 20 servers, you have 8 that are crucial. Because if you go to try to put 20 of them, and basically 22, because you have the physical machines too, into a disaster recovery model, it'll be more expensive than just doing 8. But those 8 are the ones you need in order to sustain your business, to have resilience, to keep moving, to sustain the practice, to see patients, make sure providers have the tools that they need to see patients, make sure the administrative staff can do what they need to do. So you have those 8 in a plan where you could bring up all your machines in another location, at another site, or what's most popular right now is in the cloud, where you have a disaster recovery plan in the cloud. You have Microsoft Azure, you have VMware, VR, you have Amazon. Google's getting back into the act. They're now signing BAAs where they used to not do that. Then you have smaller companies like Course 360 in Norcross, Georgia, where they actually have and I love it, they have the old school way of just being a business partner, and you bring your equipment and your situation to their facilities and you stand it up there. It's, especially on the East Coast, I'm quite sure there's some things like this on the West Coast, but on the East Coast, you're just right there in an area where it's not hurricane or tornado ridden, and it's a SOC 2 data center. So find a strategic partner that can help you test. Just remember, a test in some situations will cost you. So I know, for instance, like the company I mentioned, InfraScale, you can test as much as you want because you own the solution. You just need to have the right skill set of people who can take care of that for you. So anyway, those are my 4 items that I want to cover today on this business continuity and disaster recovery topic. But there's a lot more I can say, but I'm going to go ahead and end it there. If you have any questions, please email me, manuel@mwlconsulting.com. That's Manuel, M-A-N, or Manuel, M-A-N-U-E-L, at mwlconsulting.com. Or you can go to our website, mwlconsulting.com, and sign up for our free ITSM brief. And the ITSM brief will email you out, articles and posts and video blogs and presentations like this one, so that you can go through and see which topic. And I try to keep them short and to the point that you can absorb and apply into your medical practice or your business. And if you ever need help, obviously we're here to help you. If you need to vet consultants or contracts or something like that in these areas, we can actually help you with that as well. So, or you can call me direct at 910-210-0485. That's 910-210-0485. 0485. I'm at Extension 101, and that is my direct extension. No telemarketing or spam, please. I hate spam. I hate telemarketing. So I'm going to sign off, and I hope you have a great day, and you get that disaster recovery plan taken care of. Take care, guys.